Joseph, in this story, begins to tell himself bigger stories. He tells a story that says, I'm not going to sink into resentment and despair over the injustice and evil that is done to me. I'm going to do what I can to change what I can and trust God for the rest. And so he does. But Joseph can do that and make that bigger story because he is living in an even way bigger story than that. He is trusting that God is writing a bigger story than he can see in the story of his life. He's remembering those dreams he had as a teen. He's remembering the sense of certainty they gave him that God had destined him for something big. And he is placing the frame of that bigger story around his story. And that story gives him courage and perspective, even as he faces disappointment after disappointment. See, because that's what a bigger story does. It changes the story you tell yourself. What do I mean? Well, a number of years ago, I heard a story someone told of how they were waiting in line in a grocery store. And someone jumped right in front of them. And the man said, "Hey, man, you jumped right in front of me." The guy turned around and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know where my head is. My wife has been sick, and this afternoon she died. I got my kids in the car. I'm just trying to figure out dinner." How do you think that bigger story changed the story that that man in line was telling himself? You bet it did. Because a larger story does that. It changes your perspective. It changes how you see everything. And when Joseph faces his brothers and reveals his identity to them, he turns once again to that larger story. Because what does Joseph do? Joseph does not condemn them. Joseph instead comforts them. He says, and I quote, "And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here." Here he is, facing his brothers, whose evil brought such suffering into his life, and he comforts them? Why does he do that? It's because Joseph is living in a bigger story. And in that story, he realizes that God was working even their evil towards good. That God was working in that evil, a story where he was put in a position of power where he would be able to save his entire family. As he puts it to them later, he said, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good."